This is the story of an administrative execution so quiet, so exquisitely engineered, that the target did not even realize she had been completely dismantled until the very moment the doors locked behind her. What Camilla realized on a tense evening inside Clarence House is that true institutional power does not scream in a crowded room, but rather it operates through silent paper trails, revoked access, and the removal of privilege. In less than 24 hours, a desperate attempt to weaponize an 8-year-old princess for a global public relations victory backfired, exposing a staggering exploitation that forced King Charles to make an impossible choice between his wife and the survival of the crown itself. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how Catherine, the Princess of Wales, executed a flawless forensic retaliation that stripped the Queen of her most vital asset, reducing decades of ruthless ambition to ashes. To understand the sheer magnitude of this collapse, we must first look at the illusion of absolute power that Camilla had spent over 30 years meticulously building. For decades, she operated as the ultimate strategic survivor, playing a long and punishing game of royal chess. She weathered the explosive outrage of the 1990s, silently enduring the public vitriol, waiting patiently for the storm to pass. Her objective was never merely to be Charles's quiet companion, it was the total institutional erasure of Diana's legacy and her own complete elevation to the highest echelons of global authority. Recently, as we moved into a modern royal era, Camilla seemed entirely untouchable. She believed she had Charles completely controlled, wrapping her influence around the monarch during his periods of health vulnerability, effectively acting as the absolute gatekeeper to the sovereign. What viewers noticed in the months leading up to this catastrophic incident was a subtle but aggressive shift in the palace machinery. Camilla was no longer just standing beside the king, she was attempting to eclipse the working royals. She pushed relentlessly to elevate her own non-royal children and grandchildren, maneuvering them into the spotlight, while trying to subtly suppress the overwhelming global adoration directed at William and Catherine. Camilla understood a very cold reality about the modern monarchy. Legitimacy is not just inherited, it is photographed. But no matter how many titles she acquired, no matter how many bespoke gowns she commissioned, she was haunted by a profound commercial desperation. She owns no great royal estates in her own bloodline. She controls no hereditary duchy wealth. And deep down, she knew that her position was entirely dependent on a husband whose reign is transitional. She needed the public to see her as the beloved matriarch, the definitive grandmother of the realm, in order to secure her legacy permanently before William ascended to the throne. That underlying psychological panic is what set the stage for a catastrophic miscalculation. The trigger for this silent warfare occurred during a highly anticipated Commonwealth reception at Buckingham Palace. This was not just a routine evening dinner, it was a high-stakes diplomatic summit glittering beneath crystal chandeliers, packed with international media and dignitaries from over 50 nations. For Camilla, this was a rare golden opportunity to rewrite history on a global scale. Her secret power grab relied on a highly coordinated, manufactured moment of affection with the most popular young royal in the world, Princess Charlotte. The plan was devastatingly simple but required ruthless execution. Camilla's office understood that Princess Charlotte, with her golden hair and innocent charm, commanded the absolute devotion of the public. If Camilla could be photographed receiving a warm, deferential curtsy from Charlotte, alongside a tender, grandmotherly gesture, it would generate a priceless narrative. It would signal to the world that Diana's own granddaughter had fully accepted and submitted to Camilla as the reigning matriarch. But there was one major obstacle standing in her way, Catherine. The Princess of Wales is fiercely protective, and Camilla's office knew they could never manipulate the young. Princess with her mother standing right there guarding her every move. What happened next was a masterpiece of dark administrative protocol. Just minutes before Charlotte was scheduled to enter the Grand Hall, Catherine received an urgent message from a royal aide. The message claimed there was a critical, immediate issue backstage regarding diplomatic seating arrangements that required the Princess of Wales's direct intervention. Being a professional who never complains and never leaves a duty undone, Catherine quietly excused herself, whispering to William that she would return shortly. That detail matters. The timing of this supposed crisis was precisely engineered to isolate an 8-year-old girl in a room full of powerful strangers. Without her mother's guiding hand, Princess Charlotte was led into the main hall by a protocol officer to perform her greetings. She warmly approached her grandfather King Charles and her father Prince William, displaying the natural effortless charm that makes her the undisputed jewel of the monarchy. But as she reached Camilla, the script broke. Instead of the deep, submissive curtsy that Camilla's office had secretly demanded for the cameras, Charlotte offered only a polite brief nod and a tight smile before stepping past her. What followed was a moment of shocking moral outrage and unmasked fury. In front of hundreds of international guests, Camilla's carefully constructed facade shattered entirely, her face flushed red, and in an astonishing assertion of unearned power. She stepped directly into Charlotte's path, harshly demanding a proper curtsy. She invoked her title as Queen, berating the young girl for a lack of respect. Effectively bullying a child on the global stage, Charlotte, visibly shaken and fighting back tears, was forced to yield. But the damage to Camilla's carefully curated image was instantaneous and irreversible. William, carrying the silent, enduring grief for what his own mother suffered at the hands of this exact same institutional machinery, stepped forward immediately. He placed a fiercely protective hand on his daughter's shoulder and firmly shut down the Queen's tirade right in front of the flashing cameras. The tension in the room plummeted to a freezing absolute zero. What Camilla failed to realize in her moment of raw anger was that she had just crossed the one line William and Catherine had drawn in stone. She had targeted their child. When Catherine returned to the hall, having discovered that the backstage emergency was entirely fabricated, the heavy, uncomfortable silence in the room told her everything she needed to know. Later that evening, inside the safety of their private quarters, a tearful Charlotte confessed that she did not want to curtsy because Camilla was not her real grandmother. Her real grandmother was Diana. For Catherine, this was not just a breach of palace etiquette, it was a profound emotional betrayal and a declaration of war. But Catherine did not retaliate with screaming matches, public tantrums, or tabloid leaks. Instead, she moved with the terrifying cold precision of a future queen. Over the next few days, Catherine initiated a quiet forensic investigation. She utilized her own loyal staff to trace the digital and administrative paper trail. What she uncovered was a breathtaking conspiracy of exploitation. The aide who delivered the urgent message tearfully confessed that the directive came directly from Queen Camilla's office. Furthermore, Catherine discovered specialized instructions sent to the official event photographers in advance, explicitly ordering them to prioritize and rapidly distribute images of Camilla stroking Charlotte's hair while the child bowed. It was a pre-planned media trap. This is where the story changes. This was no longer about a grumpy step-grandmother losing her temper under pressure. This was documented proof of a calculated institutional plot to weaponize a child for PR rehabilitation. Catherine compiled every internal message, the photographer directives, and the signed staff testimonies into a single undeniable dossier. She and William requested a private immediate audience at Clarence House. Crucially, the meeting included only King Charles William and Catherine. Camilla was deliberately excluded from the initial presentation. Inside that room, Catherine laid out the thick folder of documents. She did not raise her voice. She simply presented the cold, hard evidence of Camilla's staggering exploitation, explaining exactly how the Queen had orchestrated a predatory trap for an 8-year-old girl. When Charles finally summoned Camilla into the room to answer for the paper trail, the atmosphere was suffocating. Camilla attempted to maintain her aristocratic defiance, but under the blinding light of undeniable forensic proof, her defense crumbled. She confessed to wanting a beautiful public relations moment, claiming it simply spiraled out of control. But the execution of the retaliation was already in motion. Charles, looking at the undeniable evidence of his wife's manipulation against his heir's child, delivered a devastating royal decree. Catherine was immediately granted absolute unchecked authority over the children's participation in all royal events moving forward. Camilla's access to the Wales children for any public relations purposes was permanently revoked. As the meeting ended, Camilla stood in the opulent silence of Clarence House, the terrifying reality finally setting in. What looked like a routine administrative update was actually a total dismantling of her empire. She had reached for the ultimate symbol of control, and in doing so, she had activated a silent, ruthless trap that stripped her of the only currency she had left. She was now an isolated queen staring at closed doors, waiting for a husband who suddenly refused to meet her eyes, utterly terrified of what William and Catherine would do next. The echo of the heavy wooden door closing inside Clarence House marked the exact moment Camilla realized she was entirely on her own. For over 30 years, she had relied on one absolute unshakable certainty. No matter the scandal, no matter the public outcry, Charles would always defend her. He had fought his own mother, the Church of England, and the entire British establishment to place a crown on her head. But as King Charles turned away from her, staring out the window into the dark London night, the devastating silence in the room spoke volumes. She pleaded with him to intervene to soften the decree, to remind William and Catherine that she was, in fact, the Queen. But Charles did nothing. In that suffocating heavy silence, the psychological climax of her royal existence was reached. The man who had once torn the monarchy apart to elevate her was now stepping back. Choosing the survival of the institution over his wife's bruised ego, he understood what Camilla stubbornly refused to accept. He is a transitional monarch, and without the immense global popularity of William, Catherine, and their children, the crown simply ceases to exist. To understand why Charles abandoned her in this critical moment, you have to look at the cold, hard reality of commercial desperation that governs the modern royal family. Titles are glamorous and crowns are visually stunning, but titles do not pay the bills or secure generational leverage. True institutional power is rooted in land sovereign wealth and hereditary control. When Charles ascended to the throne, he was forced by law to surrender the Duchy of Cornwall, the billion-dollar real estate and investment empire that funds the heir apparent. That entire empire, the absolute bedrock of royal financial supremacy, now belongs exclusively to Prince William. Camilla does not own a single aristocratic estate in her own bloodline. She holds no hereditary wealth that can rival the crown. Her entire existence, her sprawling staff, her bespoke wardrobe, her extensive security detail, relies strictly on the sovereign grant and her husband's temporary position on the throne. She knows with terrifying clarity that the moment Charles's reign ends, she will be a dowager queen with no blood connection to the new king. She will be entirely at the mercy of Prince William for her housing, her allowance, and her relevance. Her desperate attempt to use Princess Charlotte at the reception was never just about a fleeting photograph. It was a panicked, calculated attempt to secure independent public capital, to brand herself as the irreplaceable matriarch of the realm because she has no financial capital of her own. But that bridge to the future was just permanently incinerated. What followed in the weeks after the Clarence House confrontation was a masterclass in silent institutional retaliation. There were no dramatic press releases condemning the Queen, no leaked screaming matches to the tabloids, and no public displays of anger from the Prince and Princess of Wales. Instead, the retaliation was executed through devastating administrative shifts that humiliated Camilla behind closed doors. Royal protocol was quietly but ruthlessly rewritten. Camilla's private office suddenly found their access to the Wales family entirely severed. Any request involving the children had to be submitted in writing to Catherine's senior staff, where it was promptly ignored, delayed, or outright denied. Staff from Camilla's office, who once freely walked the main corridors to coordinate with the Wales household, were suddenly instructed to use secondary side doors, their security clearances quietly downgraded. In the grand halls of the royal residences, observers noticed subtle visual humiliations that carried profound institutional meaning. A highly anticipated portrait session that was supposed to feature the King, the Queen, and all the royal grandchildren was abruptly cancelled and permanently shelved. Furthermore, a portrait of Camilla that had recently been moved to a prominent position near the diplomatic reception rooms was quietly rotated out of sight, replaced by a historic painting of the royal lineage. When the royal family attended the next major public gathering, the seating and standing arrangements had been visibly altered by protocol officers. Camilla was strategically distanced from Princess Charlotte, with William and Catherine forming an impenetrable physical barrier around their children. To the untrained eye, it looked like standard royal choreography. But to the insiders, it was a glaring broadcast of Camilla's revoked privileges. Through this flawless execution of boundaries, Catherine did not just protect her daughter, she firmly established a new order within the monarchy. Because Catherine is known for her uncomplaining sacrifice, her quiet dedication, and her refusal to engage in petty drama, her sudden ironclad demand carried absolute weight. By forcing the king to side with her over his own wife, Catherine accelerated the transfer of power. She proved that she does not need to wear the crown yet to control the institution. She simply needs to control the future. In doing so, Catherine also resurrected the ultimate ghost that Camilla had spent 3 decades trying to bury, the legacy of Diana. For years, Camilla had operated under the assumption that she could slowly erase the memory of the people's princess by absorbing her grandchildren into a manufactured blended family narrative. She wanted the world to see her as the definitive grandmother. But by drawing an absolute unforgiving boundary around Charlotte, Catherine ensured that the young princess will be raised entirely under the protective shadow of Diana's son. completely untouchable by the woman who caused so much destruction in the past. This is the true tragedy of Camilla's relentless ambition. She spent a lifetime climbing to the highest, most perilous peak of British society, sacrificing her public reputation and weathering decades of hatred, believing that once she wore the crown, she would finally possess absolute control. But power in the royal family is an illusion if the public and the bloodline do not consent to it. What started as an arrogant demand for a curtsy in the middle of a glittering reception ended with the complete dismantling of her institutional leverage. She is now a queen in name adorned in jewels and titles, but effectively a prisoner of protocol. She walks the halls of palaces she does not own, waiting out a reign she cannot control, acutely aware that the future of the monarchy belongs to the very woman who just quietly defeated her. The dynamic of the royal family has fundamentally shifted, and the silent war behind palace gates is governed by those who hold the keys to the future. What do you think is Camilla's greatest fear now that William and Catherine hold the ultimate leverage? Let me know your highly analytical thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the hidden realities of the royal institution fascinating, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who appreciates complex power dynamics, and subscribe to the channel for more untold stories of protocol and the British crown. Click the next video on your screen for another forensic breakdown of royal history